I Walk Where Lincoln Walked by Toni Lyn White. I was born in Springfield, Illinois, on December 16, 1965, the same city Abraham Lincoln once called home. To me, Springfield wasn't just a place on a map, it was a quiet backdrop to my earliest memories, a place where history and everyday life blended seamlessly. Lincoln was everywhere. His statue stood tall in the parks, his name graced the schools I attended, and his story was woven into the fabric of the community. As a child, I remember walking past the old state capitol, unaware that the steps I climbed had been touched by one of the greatest figures in American history. The houses around my neighborhood whispered stories of the past, and the streets seemed to hum with echoes of speeches, debates, and quiet moments of resolve. Growing up in Springfield, Lincoln wasn't just a name from a textbook. He was a presence, a silent guardian of our small town. His values, honesty, humility, courage were lessons passed down in classrooms and around kitchen tables. I didn't always understand their weight, but I felt their influence in the way people treated each other, in the respect for justice, and in the pride we carried for our hometown. My family lived in a modest home, where laughter mingled with the scent of homemade meals and the warmth of close-knit bonds. Weekends were spent exploring the town's historical sites, visiting the Lincoln home, and attending community events that reminded us why Springfield was more than just a city, it was a living memory. Yet, like many young people, the call of the wider world grew louder with time. By March of 1986, after 21 years in Springfield, I packed my bags and moved west to Denver, Colorado. Leaving wasn't easy. It felt like stepping away from a part of myself, from the streets where Lincoln once walked, from the roots that had quietly shaped who I was. But even as I ventured into new landscapes, I carried Springfield and Lincoln's legacy with me. Leaving Springfield in March 1986 felt like stepping into a new chapter that was both exciting and uncertain. Denver, Colorado, was a city of soaring mountains and sprawling suburbs, a place vastly different from the flat, historic streets of my hometown. The air smelled sharper, the pace faster, and the people more diverse. It was a fresh start, but also a reminder that I was far from the place where my roots ran deep. In Denver, I often found myself reflecting on what it meant to grow up in Lincoln's hometown. The lessons of honesty and courage seemed even more vital in a world that sometimes felt fractured and fast-paced. I carried those principles quietly, like a compass guiding me through new friendships, challenges, and opportunities. By 1997, I moved again, this time to Thornton, Colorado, settling into the Woodglen subdivision. It was a peaceful neighborhood with tree-lined streets and close neighbors, a small community within the bigger Denver metro area. Even hundreds of miles from Springfield, the spirit of Lincoln's legacy continued to shape my life. In Thornton, I learned that walking where Lincoln walked isn't about geography. It's about living with integrity, choosing kindness, standing up for justice, and embracing humility. It's about listening to others and speaking the truth, even when it's difficult. Though I miss Springfield, the familiar landmarks, the quiet echoes of history, I found ways to bring a piece of it with me. In my daily life, in the simple acts of caring for those around me, I kept walking the path Lincoln had set so long ago. After years away, in June of 2010, I made the journey back to Springfield. Returning felt like stepping through a doorway to a time and place, both familiar and changed. The streets I had known as a child carried memories like old friends, and yet the city had grown, with new buildings rising alongside the old. Visiting the old state capitol again, I stood where Lincoln once stood, feeling the weight of history settle over me like a quiet mantle. The Lincoln home, preserved just as it had been, brought tears to my eyes. It wasn't just a house. It was a symbol of resilience, hope, and the power of humble beginnings. Walking through the neighborhoods, I saw faces both new and familiar. The town's heartbeat was steady, still rooted in its past, but reaching forward toward the future. Springfield had welcomed me home, just as I had hoped. That visit rekindled a deep connection to the values I had carried with me all these years. It reminded me that no matter where life takes us, our roots, like Lincoln's legacy, remain a part of who we are. Today, I live in Petersburg, Illinois, a small town with its own quiet rhythms and stories. Though it's a different pace from Springfield, it feels like home in its own way. Here, I keep walking where Lincoln walked by, living the values he taught us: kindness, service, and community. I stay busy with Daily Bread, a community food ministry that helps nourish those in need. I volunteer with Give and Take, a mutual aid group where neighbors support neighbors. And at Community Cottage, I help create a gathering place where people can connect, share stories, and find comfort. Through these acts of service, I feel connected to something bigger. It's not about grand gestures or monuments, it's about showing up, caring for one another, and building bridges in small but meaningful ways. Lincoln carried the weight of a nation, but his legacy lives in everyday choices, choosing compassion over indifference, standing up for justice, and walking with hope. So here in Petersburg, beneath the wide Illinois sky, I walk where Lincoln walked.